Ma'am, you're welcome. Are we good? 1 minute? Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. And we are back. I think Councillor Madeira Voss has one question, and then I think we are ready to go into comments.
I do have a question for Director Lake, and this kind of relates to the MPS and whether these amendments are still in compliance. And a comment that was made earlier by one of our residents regarding the mechanical and the height, because there is that diagram that showed that the height of the building roof line is the same as the micro boutiques, and he raised the question around whether that included in the height the mechanical. It is in fact, what is the exact height of the building and how does that fit in with their MPS, I guess is my question.
So let me just be clear here. So we're considering an amending development agreement here. The height of the building really hasn't changed. The building had a 5th story previously. And so the way that we would use the land use bylaw for guidance for these things.
Okay.
So each story has a maximum number of meters. So the first story can be 4.5 and then 4 meters on top of that. So we've been using that as the guidance on maximum building height.
Right.
And so we're not stepping outside of the new planning documents. The older planning documents didn't really have an overall. That's why there was multiple iterations of building height that were proposed through time, going back to the original one. The reason that we made it very clear to try to do that was working through these processes and trying to get a floor to ceiling height that made sense and was practical. So it was clear. It's not typical to use stories. So we are using stories as well.
So the reference was 39 to 40 feet in the comments that were made. Was that not an accurate?
But generally
reference?
39 feet is used in like a 3-story format. That was certainly a number in our old planning documents in the land use bylaw. Yep.
And where are we now?
I can't remember the final height. It's so there's a couple things. The overall height is measured up to a certain point, and then the mechanical and different things, the elevator shafts are not included. Do you have that right in front of you? I must have it here somewhere. So here.
So those are excluded. The mechanical and the elevator are excluded.
Yep. Where do I have that drawing? Or Tom, is it in your? So yeah, just to clarify some of that now that so
Oh God, those are small.
maximum ground floor 4.5 meters. Floors above are 4. In a 4-story situation, this equates to 16.5 meters or 54 feet, and that doesn't include. There's a list in the land use bylaw we would use as guidance around things that aren't included in overall building height.
So let's say 54 feet, that would be the same as the peak of the micro boutique. Is that what that diagram?
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is depending on the type of roof line in the previous planning documents, if it was a gable roof like that, the actual height wasn't calculated to the peak. It was partway up the gable, because often that's just a truss system where there's no habitable space. So there's
Oh,
been,
I see.
as we've moved through these 2 sets of planning documents, but what I'm going at with all of this is it is compliant with what we've established as guidance.
Okay, so the bottom line is that all the amendments are compliant with the MPS. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes.
Feel free if you have other questions, but I'll open it up for comments. Anybody would like to make comments? The Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I haven't said very much for a while, and I've been rolling over in my mind an opinion article that I read in the Globe and Mail about 10 days ago, written by an architect in Toronto by the name of Brian Haygood. He flipped my whole thinking pattern on developments like this. And one of the several of the things he said that I thought were really perfect. He said, when it comes to development projects, homeowners and other long-term residents are usually the ones who see the faults most clearly. Rootedness has a way of doing that. It makes people responsible for a place, especially when it comes to the quality of what gets built. And it seems to me that that's part of our responsibility. When you have documents like the MPS and the land use bylaw, they're, according to Haygood, concerned mostly with quantitative aspects of a proposed development. Things like density and parking. Parking, we certainly heard about tonight. And the other aspects are not easy to quantify and don't get discussed. For me, Devin did a wonderful preamble. His look at the heritage aspects of that setting was excellent, but he didn't alleviate my concerns about compatibility for the buildings that are there and for the use that the area had for the long history of Wolfville. So the impact of this development on the character of the whole neighborhood, the massing that is involved, gives me pause. I think about the Church Brewing Company and Charles Wright's architecture, and we have some wonderful buildings. I guess what sticks in my mind is that if this is approved, in 25 years' time, our downtown that we love could look, every building, every structure could look like what is being proposed currently. I feel like we need to preserve and enhance our heritage streetscape. Whether that's possible now with our MPS, I don't know. I think we need a heritage master plan. I've said that years ago. It hasn't happened, mostly because the money hasn't been there, but it does not remove the need. So I'm just concerned about, after my time around this table, what is this downtown going to look like? So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilor McKay.
Thanks. Yeah, I can totally appreciate that, Wendy, and that perspective for sure. And these things are never easy because I think we heard every side of the coin on every topic from the gallery tonight and over the time. I guess for me, it is we have policies in place for the reasons that we need to abide by those, and those are the things we put in place. And otherwise everything becomes unruly, because how would you ever move forward without it? The need for housing, and we've had that discussion at this table, I'm gonna guess 100 times now, and the strains on our community due to the lack of housing. We need more commercial space, sure, that our residents have bear the tax burden. I think it's at 98% or something now. So having more commercial to alleviate some of that burden on our residential is important. I know we bounced around parking 100 ways left of center, so I still can't come to a number, and so for me, I don't know where it would land. So at this stage of the game, as much as I would love to see more affordable units and a difference one, I would ask that you take that back. If a green wall isn't something, I think those are non-substantive changes if they were to be looked at as we went forward. I would ask that those things be considered. if we were going to bargain in good faith as we have been. So I would vote for it with that thought consideration going forward, please.
Thank you, Councillor McKay. Councillor Madeira Voss.
This is a very interesting process. And I can't say I feel confused or I'm not sure what I'm thinking, except that there is a development agreement in place. And that development agreement is for a building that, when I look at it side by side as it was presented to us, is not less massive than what is being proposed. And it is not more consistent with any kind of historical or heritage design than what is being proposed. And so, although I share those concerns about the look of that entrance into our town, I have concerns about what kind of precedent this sets for any new development, although I'm not against modern buildings. And there are many aspects of this that I really appreciate. The fact that it's going beyond the 35%, sustainability or climate. I mean, there's some very progressive things in this design, and I think we need to acknowledge those. And I also have to kind of go back to the fact that what is being proposed with this amendment is actually, and Director Lake, you can correct me if I'm wrong, will be a shorter building than the one that was approved. Is that right?
Well, there was a 5th story massing on the previous building.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've taken the 5th story, but the height of what is being proposed for this 4th story, is that consistent with the 4th story
Yes.
with that.
Of the approved building?
of the approved building?
Yes.
So the big difference is that 4th story is being extended over the 3rd story, because the front of the building was stepped back for 3 stories.
And there was, I can't remember the exact size, but it was sort of maybe in the 1,500 to 2,000 square foot additional box that would be on the roof. That would be certainly from the trail would have been very prevalent. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
So initially I confess I'm disappointed about the 3rd story, because I really believe that step back, the 3rd story, brought the building in line much more with the historical nature. The rest of the buildings on Main Street would be the same height as that. So that step back for me is something that I'm disappointed in. I would have liked to have seen that maintained. And but if what's there now is compliant, I don't know where to go with that. So that's just my comment, that I think either way, either this massive building is there or another massive building is there. But either way, we have approved something that will take up that space. And it's a question of how comfortable we are with these changes. Sorry, that doesn't end.
Thank you.
This is comments.
Comments, or if you'd have a question, whatever.
Yeah, it's been a long night, and I just want to say that I did hear everybody that, spoke in the gallery. I really hope that when the message came through on your phone that said this was going to be mostly long-term rentals, that you do hold true to that. I just think that's what we're needing in there. I know there was like the huge issue with parking. I get that. There are trade-offs. I know how Devin presented the active transportation. Let's lessen our greenhouse gas emissions, all of that stuff that's in their MPS that we're trying to cut back. And I hope that you take to heart those affordable units, that you will put in one that's accessible and have one for a family, and look at it in the multi-range, not just the bachelors, because that's going to be more cost effective for you, but to think of an accessible unit, to think of a family, and to think of somebody that's single. So you have the bachelor, the 1 and the 2 bedrooms, and at least make one of each on that, so I hope that you heard that. But I will be voting in favor of this motion. It does comply, if the amendments do comply within our NPS, and that's the most, that's where I have to take this from the very first slide that Devin presented, to say, do these amendments fall within the NPS, and that's what I'm taking the evidence based on that. So I will be voting in favor of the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Butler?
I will be voting in favor of this as well, for a multitude of reasons. But the first thing I want to say is you say it's been a long night. It has been a long, how many years of going through this? A lot of public input, a lot of feedback, a lot of walking by a site that has been an eyesore for a very long time. That the number one reason I'm voting for it is to finally have a process in place to put something there so that it's actually something, that something is there. Deputy Mayor Elliott has such a way with words that I value so much. I have for a very long time. Before I was even a councillor, I always valued your words about the history of the town and all of that. I'm a history buff as well. But I have to think of what I want for the town and what everybody else wants for the town based on the input that I get. And everybody wants a mix of old and new. Change is tough for people. We've witnessed that. We witness it every day. But I have to take into account that I can't just think of the history of those few that were part of the first picture that we saw tonight. Because we welcome folks from all over the world to Wolfville. So there has to be a little something for everybody, as well as a reminder of where we all started from. We had folks that spoke to us tonight that are not originally from Canada, and it's wonderful. It's great that somebody who was youthful, my neighbor Daniel, who lives on Balcombe Drive, it was great. Daniel is new to town, and I value those opinions. Daniel's also like me, he doesn't have a car. He gets around. Knowing that someone of his age wants affordable units for everybody, wants less parking because he sees the benefits of that, that gives me a bit of hope that all of these discussions mean something to a wide variety of folks. I had a note here and also from somebody in the public, but I can't even read my own writing. Just a couple of things on, again, revisiting the history aspect. We look at this building. I don't see this building as overly modern compared to like Steve Haysom talking about the library in Halifax, which still needs to grow on me. I see this as a step forward with the housing crisis. I see this as a step forward with putting something in place that I do find it looks, I don't want to say welcoming, but it does offer something. It's better than a hole in the ground, which I've had to explain to many people for years now. There's debate about other businesses that have gone into town that have turned out to be very profitable for the town. And that was against a lot of public scrutiny. We're talking about putting concrete sidewalks in our parks. Is that really compliant with how nature's supposed to work? No, but it is accommodating folks so that they can enjoy the space like everybody else. So there's a lot to consider. I loved the conversations tonight. I value history and I value this town, and I really think that this is an opportunity to welcome a lot of folks, have more great conversations, and put something in that space that will like we can finally say, yes, this is what we have passed and here it is. So I'm in favor of this.
Councillor Palmerton?
I just want to say principle, I'm not really opposed to this project. I know that we are gonna build something there at some point. There's no question about that. But when we start making trades and giving thing away, it's forever, or it's for a long time. I mean, I don't know what the life expectancy of this building is, but it's 40, 60, 80, 100 years. So we're not giving away, like, a seasons pass to the Katie Axman or anything. So that's what makes me that's really what has me concerned. And I think we are giving it a little bit away here. And I think that was even in the first development agreement. And so anyway, for those reasons, I'm not gonna vote in favor of this.
Before I pass the gavel over, does anybody else want to make any other comments? Deputy Mayor? Thank you, ma'am. Relinquish the chair. Thank you, everybody, for such thoughtful discussion tonight. It was actually a pleasure to sit in this chair and hear such comments of concern for our community. It was a pleasure to hear from the people who spoke. It was interesting to see the two younger people speak with a different view than some of the older people had. I found that very informative for me. I'm sure everybody. I am in support of this. I agree with some of my colleagues that, and I hope that our conversation, certainly our concerns about ensuring that this stays as much as possible as long-term accommodation, that the comments about looking at whether the accessible unit can be affordable and a two-bedroom unit can be affordable. I do hope that the developers will take that under advisement. We have a desperate need for housing in this community. We have a desperate need for affordable housing in this community. And we hope that sometime in the near future, we are going to hear if we're successful on our accelerator fund. I really concerns me that that there are people in Halifax and Ottawa who are probably watching this town if they are about to consider giving us that if we turn down a development. So that's certainly part of my concern, but mostly we really need housing. I've had one former and a current resident of town ask me recently about the property. Former resident could not find a place that suited her and her husband. They ended up moving to Kentville, would love to have stayed here, but there just was nothing here for them. So I am, on the basis of housing alone, I am in support of this. I think contrary to some comments that have been made about other MPSs, our MPS is I think it's very visionary and forward thinking. We worked really hard to make it that but for it to be of value, we have to actually walk the talk. So when we talk about climate change and active transportation, and I know at the last meeting, I said, I'm not sure $66,000 was enough, but what I'm saying tonight is I hope staff will bring back a report to us soon that tells us how we are going to manage parking so that we have less parking. Sometime next month, we are going to hear as a council about King's Transit Plan. I'm looking forward to hearing what that will do. If we're going to even hope to make a dent in the climate crisis, then we have to be real big players in that, and we have to do something different. Just because we all got here by cars, we didn't all get here by cars, but most of us did. Some of us walked. Some of us are here by cars, and if there's an alternative, that would be better for this community and for the children who are growing up in this community. So while I still have a concern about parking, I want to have that concern addressed in a way that in the future, I don't need a car to get down to this office or to get downtown. I think our downtown is changing. I thought it was very interesting to see what it was 125 years ago. It wasn't that long ago that the Church Brewery was the church I attended on Sunday, and that was, I'm sure, one of the things you were referencing. Things change. It was, that particular one was very personal to me and a shock, and I had a great dinner there tonight. So we do adapt, we do learn, even us old folks. So I truly hope that this will soon be seen as a good thing for the community. I will be supporting it. Thank you. We could, I'm just thinking somebody who's